Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 403. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Don't listen to this podcast, so says the sensei of the Whatnot, Segulin, or the Duke of You Know.
How's it going, eh?
On this episode, we are, of course, talking about Multiversity #1 and the horror themes of that issue. We're also going to talk about Batman Eternal 21 and Supergirl number 34. We also have a listener voicemail and action-packed comment. We actually have some debates that I think are quite interesting in this episode, so I'm excited to share it with you. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Plus, we are part of the DCinfinite.com podcast partnership. Once again, sponsoring this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. This is the time of the month where you want to be checking out DCBService.com for the pre-orders. Whether you're into comics, hardcovers, trades, whether you're into statues, toys, any kind of collectibles that you're into, DCBService.com is your pre-order source. Be sure to be checking out the amazing deals and the ways you can be saving money on the collectibles that you enjoy from friend of the show, DCBService.com. I want to give a special shout out to the fact that they are a digital partner, whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics. If you go to their site, link your accounts to your DCB Service account, and do your shopping through their portal on their site. It doesn't cost you anything more, but they get a portion of that, which leads to you receiving a portion of that back towards your DCB Service order. So please make sure to shop through our sponsor, DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com. I want to give a shout out. They're moving. They're actually moving their offices for InStockTrades.com to Memphis, Tennessee. Where this is an advantage, if you like shopping through InStockTrades.com, their reorders are going to be so much quicker now because they're closer to the distributor. So I want to shout them out and wish them the best of luck at their new location. I'm loving the deals they're offering. Just for an example, I'm a big fan of Fables. The Fables Camelot trade paperback. This is $19.99 regularly. They're offering it right now for 50% off at $9.99. This is volume 20, and it collects issues 131 to 136 of this multiple Eisner Award-winning series. I want to thank DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
And in case you aren't getting it, that is a warning siren. Do not go any further. Do not listen to this podcast. This is a good point to hit stop. Do not listen to this podcast. It's dangerous. Do not listen.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Our first discussion this episode is going to be of the Multiversity, issue number 1, House of Heroes. Grant Morrison is the writer. Ivan Reis is on pencils. Joe Prado is on inks. Nia Ruffino colors. Todd Klein letterer. Rice, Prado, and Ruffino on the cover. Chris Burnham and Nathan Fairbairn. After Schuster, Brian Hitch and Alex Sinclair, Grant Morrison on the variant covers. Ricky Purdon is the editor. Eddie Berganza is the group editor. Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. Special thanks to Rion Hughes. And apologies for any name butchery right there. This is going to be an interesting one to talk about, Jim, because I don't know where you're at on this one. I liked this. I didn't love it, and let me explain that real quick. It has the problem that I sometimes have with a lot of Morrison's work. I had this with R.I.P., I had this with Final Crisis. I know I'm going to love this, but I need to completely understand it before I'm going to love it. I've read this 4 times now. I understand some of the basic elements that are going on in it. I have a funny feeling as this series goes on, it's going to be one of those, R.I.P. did this. I clicked at some point. I'm like, oh, I get it now. Final Crisis, same thing. A couple issues in, oh, now I get it. And I did a reread, and the initial issues connected to themes that were in the later issues. That's usually my Morrison experience. So I enjoyed finally being able to delve into this. I'm glad it's here. I'm not there yet. Where are you at on this?
Well, I personally completely understand everything he's trying to say here.
Good. You can explain it.
Well, here's the thing. I was going to share it with all you guys and just break it down a little bit, but I figured part of the enjoyment is letting you figure it out on your own. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to sit back and and just let the discussion go and not actually give you all the knowledge. Let you experience it yourself, because that's the true greatness that is Grant Morrison.
If you value your lives, you must not listen to this podcast. He's invariably going to sing at some point, which is going to be your punishment for not listening to that. And he's going to say stuff like this.
I think we're in a very similar place. I understand the basic concept behind the book, and I am enjoying it. And I know, I'm guessing by issue 4 is where we'll really start to get the groove of the series. Mm-hmm. And the reason I throw out issue 4 is because I went back in the San Diego Comic-Con coverage that was over on Infinite. They talk about, because there was a multiversity thing, and he's talking about what's happening in the book. And part of the thing that he talked about was that we're going to get characters in issue 2 that have read the stuff that happened in issue 1 in their books, and 3 and 4, etc., like that. And you're going to start getting these characters that are introduced in issue 4 that knows what's coming because they read what happened that occurred in our issue 3 in their universe. And I think that's where things are going to be kind of interesting, where these characters are going to start interacting with characters who will pull out a comic book and say, see, I just saw what you guys did, and I knew you were coming here. And that's where I think, that's why I say issue 4 is where we're really going to get the groove of what's going on in this, because the overarching story is that the adventures that happen in one universe are a comic book in another universe. And Multiversity is going to start crossing those boundaries. So I'm going into this universe, and I know what's going on because I have that comic book. But it's a comic book in my universe, but it's the real life in that one. I think that is the overarching, coolness and weirdness. Yeah, and I say weirdness in a wonderful way that about this series is that you have this interaction of what is real and what is not.
Yeah, Morrison's one of those writers where this is very common. And I don't mean this, anything I said is not meant in a bad way. He's one of those writers that I jump onto his work because it's going to challenge me. He's going to try to play around with concepts that we've all known and loved and take them somewhere further, which he's doing with this. Because I always loved the idea in the multiverse that for some people, like this goes back to when Barry Allen first encountered Jay Garrick. Jay Garrick was a character he read in comics. So it's neat that Morrison's playing with that concept and using that as a tool to increase the storytelling of this. Like you said, in issue 2, we're probably going to find clues to what happened in issue 1 in issue 2 because other characters have read that stuff. And we already saw elements of that in this where characters were saying, they're for real? Yeah. And so there was so much to like in this. I thought the artwork was gorgeous. There were things I really enjoyed about those themes and the characters that were popping in. I want to see more. I need more info. I'm not there yet. And I'm waiting for that click. And Morrison always delivers it. It's going to be there. It's just something that I know I'm going to have to patiently enjoy this ride and wait for. I did like the whole theme of this being like a horror novel, and we as the reader were somehow a part of it. Because by the end, the book was talking to us. And it was doing that all the way through, but more so towards the end did I really feel like, oh, wow, it's talking to me. And I'm one of the readers who has to, worry about the fact that I read this book. And I think that's cool. I think that is a cool concept. I'm a fan of that.
One of the reasons I'm taking that from that is, if you remember back to, one of the Doctor Who episodes, where it was one of the Weeping Angels one, Angels in New York, I think, or something like that, where the Doctor had this book, and every time he read it, that meant that would have to occur because it's now out there. It's now knowledge. It's now known. It's actually part of the universe now. By reading that book, it has to occur that way. And I think that's the concept kind of going on with the comic book is once we read it in the comic book, that means it has happened to these characters. Until it's actually read, until it's actually part of the universe, then it's open for debate. It's open for how they can handle it. Right now, boom, this is it. It's in creation. We have this physical entity. We have this existence now.
Yeah. What do you think about having the Monitor back in this one?
Hey, man, come on, monitors rule. Though I do wish they had more of them, and I was hoping that when I first started thinking about Multiversity, obviously this is not the story I thought was going to happen, because that's the way it is with me, and anything that Grant Morrison creates, I have one thing in my head, and something completely different pops up. I was thinking this is going to be more of this is Earth 20. This is what goes on here, and maybe there would be one central character who would travel between the universes and show us life in the multiversity. This obviously is completely different, where they're taking an adventure and they're taking heroes from the different tracks and throwing them together, and there's this big bad, and there's this overarching giant story that's happening. So for me, I had that big, what the heck? And then you get the Monitor introduced. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Bring back the Monitor from the, stuff we've seen in the past. Kind of wondering where he's going to go, what's going to happen to him. Is he truly the last of the Monitors? Because really, they can always make a comeback somehow. In my mind, they're kind of like Guardians, where, yes, you can say you killed them all, but hey, surprise. There's more really watching, but they were just sitting over here watching.
Now, do you remember who he is?
Yeah, that's Midge.
Right, from Final Crisis.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one, Earth 51 was destroyed, and he's the one that became human.
Right.
So I'm thrilled that he's in this one, and it's funny, this adds to the theme that even though Flashpoint happened, the previous universe happened as well.
Yes.
And he's our connection point to say, all of these stories. So for anybody that's a continuity junkie that's like, oh no, all my stories don't matter now. No, they absolutely do. And Morrison, once again, has brought all of those elements back in by creating this series and using this character. This is another link. Flashpoint already did that brilliantly well. But I think this is just yet another link to the fact that even though things have shifted, all of those stories did happen. And Nix is just one of those people that bring it about. That was the part I really understood.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. Which, joking aside, this is something that Morrison does really well. When he's playing with these themes that you're really going to have to think through multiple issues down the road and setting seeds in place for you, he is crafting hooks into his stories that keep you as the reader connected. Nix was that hook for me right from the get-go because of the fact that he was human, because of the fact that we were seeing things through his eyes. Until he switched into being a Monitor, as a human, he was my connection into, okay, he's guiding us into the story. Then, bam, he's got powers and a talking monkey, and it's I'm like, all right, now we're having fun. I loved all of that. That part really worked for me. Because if you didn't have that, this probably would be, for me, a very different conversation right now. Because I might have even gone to the limit where I'm like, oh, I don't know that I liked it. Because I needed that hook. But that's what I'm saying. That opening part in the beginning was critical for me. Because then we got to Earth 7 and things got wacky. I was already latched onto at least a character at that point, which is smart. It's very smart writing.
Well, it's funny you say that because my first read through, I really was not. First read through, I did not like this. Okay. I flat out say did not like. Not even curious. I was just like, what the heck? As I said, I had in my head what I thought Multiversity was going to be. It took 2-3 read throughs for me to get it, to kind of get the groove, the basic story, to then go to appreciate the story that's being told. That it's not just here's a snapshot into this universe. It's an actual interaction with the universes. So, with Midge, Nix, like, yeah, I'm glad he's back. I was like, what? Super Judge? What? Wait, hold on. Where are you going? And there was a lot of just craziness. So this is one of those issues that, I've already threw out issue 4 before you really make a true judgment on the series, but, definitely not on first read through. this is a book that by second, third read through, I had to go through and actually look at what was happening, appreciate the beautiful artwork, and just everything that's being told in these pages. Went, okay, now I'm gonna get issue 2 now. I'm gonna continue on with the story and see where this goes. But yeah, that first read through was really rough, and I was like, man, dude, can't you just tell a straight story? Why do you gotta do this to me?
See, I like that, though. I honestly like that his stories are a bit heady, that he tries to challenge concepts. I wouldn't want all of my books this way. It's something I know that I'm going to get when I read Morrison, that he's going to take concepts and turn them on their head. It's how you get things like Frankenstein. I mean, look how we love that guy.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, and Morrison reworked that concept when he was doing Seven Soldiers to the point where it just had legs and just kept going. That's something that I really think is a strength of his. So there's concepts that are being developed here that are going to lay the groundwork for writers in the future to do fun things with the multiverse. And I'm glad that he's, you know what, if they had done this earlier, I don't know that it would work as well as it's going to work now. Because you certainly don't want to do this at the start of the New 52.
Right.
Because there was so many new concepts and so many changes being introduced there that if you threw this into the game then, I don't know that it would have worked. Now it works because we're at a point where we've stabilized with our characters in the New 52. We know what their status quo is. Now you can do stuff like this and make you go, okay, now I really got to think. And taking him at that sequence where he first met Thunderer, you know, he's got to take a look at this and go, okay, I have an opportunity. Knowing his backstory and knowing that he didn't have the chance, he didn't save his world, his Earth that he was monitoring. Now he has a chance to save this guy and step up and maybe, you know, be that person, you know, and make things right in his mind. I like this. You know, normally when that happens in comics, you see the happy ending that Captain Carrot was talking about later in the book. You see that part where you go, hoorah, everything's great, all that kind of stuff. This is the farthest thing from a happy ending for a person that you can get. What happened to him, horror stories to me, when they're done right, should creep you out afterwards to the point you feel you need a bath. That happened in this with what happened to Nyx and his monkey. I mean, like when you go after the pet too, that's where things get really dangerous. Because I love the part where he like wakes up in Earth. He's like, you know, it's like choose your weapons, Nyx Watan, and like the comic book's tossed to the side, and we see that there is a connection between him and the book that he's reading. He's being pulled darkly into that world of the comic. It's a portal of a sense. And I loved that. Like, that was the part where, especially in the second read-through, I was completely engaged by this selfless act of like, I'm going to take your spot, Thunder. I'm going to take care of this. Let's get you out of there because we need you elsewhere. And him thinking, because he's a monitor, that somehow he's going to be able to pull it out. Somehow he's going to be able to escape when that's the farthest thing from the truth. And being captured is far worse than anything any other villain can do to you. Because it's not a matter of being killed. You are setting yourself up for a lifetime of torment. And even if you try to end yourself and end your situation, the anti-death equation is going to keep bringing you back into this torment. So there is no respite. There is no escape, no matter what, which is even worse, because you might think you find a way out, and they will bring you back in. That part was great. And those are the parts that, as the storyline was going on, I'm like, okay, I'm latching onto this arc. So the things I'm not quite getting yet, this arc I'm getting. I know that there's underlying themes and subtext here that I'm just not grasping at the moment. And maybe I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to get him a few issues in. Cool. I'm at least into this creepy story right now. Because it was super creepy.
Yeah, and it gets you wondering, who is the Ordry? Who is that? Is that us, the reader? Is that the creator? Or not the Ordry, the Gentry, sorry. Who is that us, the reader? Is that the creators? Is that, you know, the internet? You know, is that just this, because this is just evil force that's now attacking the multiversity, that's attacking these different worlds. It's destroyed Seven. It's pulled Nyx into this death equation. It's pulled everything into, you know, it's attacking multiple worlds. And what is it? Who is it? And that's what I'm curious about, is what is this thing? What is this entity?
I liked seeing the Superman of Earth 23 because after you went through that whole sequence, I started to need, I'm like, you know, what I really need here is a connection to DC mythos. bring in somebody that is an archetype that we're used to. And having that Superman brought in came in at the right point for me. I needed to see him being Superman. I like that we got to see him in his alter ego. We got to see a quick visit of his Justice League, but also seeing Vixen there was really a high five moment for me, because she's somebody we don't have in the New 52. And seeing Black Lightning at the table, and obviously because of the way that Earth works, it was really cool to see all that. We're seeing pieces to the puzzle now where you've got Lex Luthor's tools from that world being used, and just how dangerous it is to experiment with things like alternate dimensions. I love that stuff. I mean, this was really, really the kind of thing that I wanted to see from Multiversity, so that came at a point where I needed it.
Yeah, see, here's the thing with me and the Earth 23 Superman. I really like the character, and I like the Superman-esque qualities. This is Superman. He's different. He's his own version of him. But the one thing I always and it's something I have a hard time getting my hand up, grasping on the concept. If the President of the United States put on a Superman costume, everyone would say, hey, that's the President in a Superman costume. He is one of, if not the most recognizable people in the world. So how can he have an alter ego as Superman and the President? That's the only thing I can't get. I have a hard time grasping.
Yeah, it's funny. I want to get to know him. He's still, even though he's had multiple appearances, I don't feel like I know that character as much as I would like to. So I was excited about this part of this story. Because do you feel like you've got a true handle on him?
I got a concept of him, and I like the concept. I think he's a really cool Superman. So it's not I'm like, oh, this isn't a Superman. No, this definitely is a Superman. So I get that. I like that. And the couple times we had him in Action Comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a couple times we had him in action. I was like, oh, okay, that's a cool Superman story. But it's just always that one little bit, that one little fact that he's the president. If he had any other position, I would be okay. It's like one of the things with Clark Kent. There's a difference that Clark presents himself. Plus, he's also just a reporter. You really, a lot of people, the world doesn't know what Clark Kent looks like. Maybe you've read some of his stuff, but people don't pursue what he looks like. The President of the United States is a recognizable face. And for this Superman not to have a mask on, or not to have some way to distinguish differently between when he's Superman and when he's the president, that always just throws me.
Doesn't that concept of Superman being able to blur himself with how fast he moves, doesn't that work for this? Because I guess I don't know that we don't have that concept in place. And that's where I'm saying I'd like to get to know his story more. Because I actually like the idea of him being the president. It's a different sort of take on Superman. I wouldn't want our Superman to be the president. But I like that on a different world, we can see Superman take on that role. And for this Superman, it makes sense with what he's doing. This is a way for him to be an agent of change on the other side. I would like to know more to address what you're talking about, though, because you're right, it's an inherent flaw unless it's addressed, and I'd like to see that addressed. Because
and maybe it is addressed. Maybe he does do the super vibrating of the face and whatnot, so that he's able to. So you never get a clear image of Superman. And if that's the explanation, I'm cool with it, because we've seen Soup do that kind of stuff. That's well within the Kryptonian spectrum of power set and etc. But it is always something that, again, you talk about, just want to know a little bit more about it. As I say, the concept of him is really cool, and just when we see the appearances of him and the fact that Superman as the president, as an agent of change, again, all that could make some really great stuff. So I'm not arguing with the concept of the character. There's just that one little bit, and if it's easily explained as he keeps in hyper mode while he's Superman, I'm okay with that. So, that's, again, it's weird because it's little stuff like that always just drew my attention. And same thing with our buddy Captain Carrot. Absolutely love Captain Carrot. I've never really read any of his comics, but within this one page, I was like, I got to read more of this guy, because just the never argue with cartoon physics logic. I cheered at that. I'm like, he gets crushed flat as a pancake and boop, pops up, never argue with cartoon physics. Like, oh, that's perfect. Because his world, it makes sense. So now he's on this world, he still keeps those same qualities. He still keeps that same traits. And I was like, oh, that is cool. I have to read Captain Carrot now.
I like that there's an opportunity here with Multiversity to reestablish these concepts, but also to move them forward. So they don't have to always obey all the rules that they did in the past. I don't know that they did, and I don't know that they didn't. I don't know how far Morrison's taken them, because I'm with you. Like Captain Carrot, I've read Captain Carrot in a variety of crossovers over the years, or team up issues and things. I don't have a vast knowledge of Captain Carrot, but every time I've read the character, I like the concept. I think it's really cool. But this in particular was a great use of the character, because I did feel like it was a modernization or moving forward of the character, and it may be just the way the character's interacting with this more modern story that it's, really at the core of the Captain Carrot concept. I love that. The cartoon physics thing, amen, I 100% agree with you. What was working for me here is we took the Superman of Earth 23 out of his world and had him interacting with Captain Carrot. I always find that's a great storytelling tool to get to know both characters, because I felt I got to know more about Superman of Earth 23 through his interactions with Captain Carrot than anything else, just because they were both like a lens into each other, because they were clearly from such different places, and they had to explain themselves to each other. I really like those moments. That's where team-up's done well, when you've got that exposition that lets us get to know both characters. So there's a lot to like in this, and it's funny, as we're talking about it, I'm like, wow, clearly through multiple read-throughs, I'm liking this more and more as it goes on, which, again, this is what happens with Morrison's stuff. The more I talk about it, the more I reread it, the more I think it through, the more I get pulled into the world. That's why I can't read his stuff once and make that it. If I do that, I horribly lose the whole point of the story. I need multiple read-throughs in order to really start grasping what's going on. And like you said, multiple issues. Yes. It may be by issue 4 that I'm completely into all this.
Oh, God, yeah. And like we talk about characters like Earth 36 Red Racer, their version of the Flash. He's the resident comic book nerd here. And I like the fact that he's like, I got to be a part of this because, one, I got to be a part of this. I'm a comic book nerd. But two, I understand the multiverse. I understand what's going on in these other worlds. And it makes sense for him to go along. And I thought that was a really cool, multiple concepts of, one, the comic book geek. If we're in this situation, we both are like, hey, I'm in, come on, I got to do this. But also it would make sense because we have a concept and knowledge of other universes just because he reads the comic books, just because he reads it. And the fact that he's holding the Action Comics that shows Superman, our Action Comics that has Earth 23 Superman on it in his hand, and he's handing it to Earth 23 Superman saying, hey, this is what's going on here. I thought that was a really neat, just, again, they're playing with they're crushing the fourth wall, where our world, which I believe they said is 33, is right in the middle of this multiversity where all these comics we're reading are actually happening on these other worlds. And this is a guy who, on his world, he's read our comics, or he's got our comics somehow, or whatnot. I'm not exactly sure how he's reading them, but it's still, I was like, man, that's a neat little twist to add into this.
Have you ever read Savage Dragon?
No.
From Image?
No, I haven't, but that's who Dino Cop's based off of, right?
That's what it looks like. Okay. It's a parody, an homage, whatever you want to call it. That was the first thing that came to mind, and I'm not the only one. I mean, it's on the internet, and Eric Larson, the creator of Savage Dragon, even commented on it. And it's interesting how not only did we have that, but we clearly had with Lord Havoc and what was going on there. I mean, there's no way that wasn't a wink and a nod to Marvel Comics and those characters there. So what do you think about that? And because I really liked that they explored that within this story. What were your thoughts?
That was, second. Well, it's funny. The Lord Havoc one, right from the beginning, I was like, wait, that's Dr. Doom and the Fantastic Four. How are they getting away with this? Because my first mind was on why and how. Wow, that's you wonder if there's going to be any backlash on this, or if they're able to get away with it because of they're not basing a comic on those characters. They're just using those character types, but there's no. It's in this day and age when they're very clearly written. This person was created by this. This was created by that. I don't see how he's getting away with it unless it's just accept it. Me personally, I love it. I want to see more stuff like that. But you wonder, how does he get away with that stuff?
You know what? It's the same way of saying, though, like Marvel has Squadron Supreme. And if you read Squadron Supreme, there are so many archetypes in that are clearly based on the Justice League. It's a careful line that you have to tread, but I think you can get away with it with a wink and a nod as long as you don't go too far with it. And I think he did that cleverly here. I like Dino Cop. I think it was a cool idea, and it's got to be an homage to Savage Dragon, and I think that's kind of cool. If anything, you should. At this point, I would highly recommend anybody, if you've never read Savage Dragon and you like Dino Cop, you really should. Because Savage Dragon has had some really cool storylines over the years. So this would be a good point to maybe visit those characters. And it's the same thing with the Marvel characters that way, the way that they did it. It's an interesting, that concept of trying to fold in where DC Comics and Marvel Comics fits into their own multiverses is something fans have been trying to do for a long, long time. If you've got a multiverse in both, do they somehow connect? The DC versus Marvel even tried to address some of that. So it's interesting to see it being played with here. You get away with it by the way I think Morrison did it here. You make sure that you're really careful to make sure that nobody has the same name, but they have a parody name. And that's because it's a parody, you can get away with it.
Well, Behemoth Bash Bunny. Come on, Hulk Smash.
Of course, right, exactly. So then it becomes a parody, and you have to be very careful with those. So I think that's how you get away with it. What did you think of the tiny versions, like the little Wonder Woman and the little Steel?
Yeah, I thought we've seen them before. Mm-hmm. And isn't that like the universe where it's instead of like Bruce Wayne's parents being killed, they were shoved down, and they're just like it's a sweeter and innocent, a more sweeter, innocent version of the universe.
I think.
Okay.
I want to know as we're going along. I don't know how. Here's the thing. I don't know how much is going to be mapped out as far as specifics on each world. I think it's going to be the worlds that they go to. You're going to get to know more things about. But I think part of the point of this is going to tell a good story, beginning, middle, and end. But similar to I almost said Sovereign 7, which was the Chris Claremont book. Seven Soldiers, similar to Seven Soldiers. There's going to be a larger overarching arc. You're going to get to know a whole bunch of characters, but there's going to be room for creators then to take those concepts and do something with them moving forward. Like, I think now you and I know a lot more about Frankenstein than we ever did through Seven Soldiers, and that's not a insult to that work. It was a 4-issue miniseries. And then, 2 bookends. I'm talking about the Frankenstein parts of that series. There's only so much you're going to get to know at that point. He's had a lot more storytelling now in the New 52 that I've been able to wrap my head around. That I really adore the character now. That's a strength of what Morrison did. So I think that's going to happen here. There's a lot of these concepts I want to see more of. I want to see more of that Hawkman that was behind Aquawoman in that one sequence.
Yeah. That cyber Hawkman kind of. Yeah.
That was cool looking. I was like, more Hawkman stuff. I love it. Let's do something with it.
A book of just Hawkmen from the different worlds.
Yeah, Hawkmen. Be my dream book. It was great to see then Harbinger brought in. Morrison's doing a great job of bringing in familiar and comfortable DC Comics concepts that go along with larger multiverse events that happen. And those are things that in the New 52 at this point, we need to introduce some of those things. It's okay to modernize them. It's okay to move them forward a little bit. But there's also that ambiguity that these are creatures that because of their nature, they were probably around in the previous universe in some level. They've been reborn into this world, but there's echoes of the past with them as well. Really important at this point for DC to do this, because you've got a fan base that's us, who really enjoyed the previous universe, loving the new universe. The more they connect them without necessarily being forced to, that old stuff happened. I like the fact that I can read my old stories and clearly connect them to pre-Flashpoint and feel like they are in some way echoing in this world. That's happening here. That stuff, when you start introducing these concepts, gradually starts to happen in a way that's not overdone and not too forced. I don't know if you like that. I know I do. And I think that's important for some readers who've been looking for a connection to their long boxes that they have, because I think you need to do that. And I think it's a good way to do this to make all those stories relevant again.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like seeing when they start telling the stories about, see, this past story that you love did actually exist, and there's this, the stuff that we were used to and we've read all that time and we spent all that time and money and just invested so much into it. Yes, it still exists. It's not out there. It's not dead. It's not gone. Here's a little glimpse to let you know. See, it's there. Maybe the story's a little bit different this time, but it's still the same. We still have the Harbinger, who was part of with the Monitors, who was part of everything that happened through them. So we're seeing that, yes, these characters did exist. This universe, it probably turned out a little bit differently, but it's still that same basic story that's out there. And I do like that, and I do appreciate when they give us that modern version of it, especially in like the various other monthlies where they say, like, there's a lot of bat stories that, hey, did this ever happen? Yeah, oh, here's a little glimpse. See, this is what happened here. Oh, see, this is what happened here. Oh, okay. So I do enjoy that, and I do appreciate that. And so that was something when she popped up, I was like, oh, cool, Harbinger's still around. Ish, sort of.
Yeah. The way you said that's brilliant, actually, because that's the way I look at it. I'm not quite sure what the connection is to the past. I don't need that necessarily spelled out right now. Morrison may do that here. He may not. It's okay. The concept's being reintroduced. The orrery corruption. I look at that as it's going to be interesting to see if that's going to be an opportunity for Morrison to continue to craft these worlds. Like, I wonder if the corruption is going to leave some of these worlds drastically changed at the end of this. And that part, I think, is going to be very interesting to me to see. I want to see that play out.
Yeah, and I got this weird concept and a weird idea that the orrery is coming from, I want to say, from our Earth. And it's, because our Earth doesn't have any superheroes in it, but we were able to craft this orrery for some reason, for some way. So that's, how we created the anomalies. We created this destructive force that's hitting all these universes. It's on us. And I think that's, because when just the way the comic keeps talking to us, the reader, it's like saying, hey, you guys are creating this thing. You guys are doing this. And part of me wonders if that's where it's going to come from.
I love when Superman was reading his comic.
Yeah.
My other identity is an open secret here. My real life published as a monthly comic. And then you see, next, Superman journeys beyond the void. Meet Thunderer of Earth 7 and the strangest guest stars of all in House of Heroes. And then basically Captain Carrot's over his shoulder. I always suspected that one world's reality is another's fiction. That's why I like happy endings. This is really cool. I love that stuff. It just was, I know we talked about that earlier, but just seeing it play out again on these pages, it just brings a smile to my face. Because of the fact that this book doesn't wind up necessarily with a happy ending.
Oh, no. Well, here's the thing, though. You got to remember, Sean. Mm-hmm. When you look at life and you start just thinking, it's just, everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome. But,
I warned everyone at the beginning to turn off this podcast. It's, it's very similar to this comic and the themes here. I
watched a Lego movie recently.
Yeah. Yeah. We really should have like an opening page that that's a more descriptive warning.
What I was really gonna say was I like the fact that those are the pages from that Action Comics issue, and that Action Comics issue ends with that stuff. I keep saying actual a lot, but that's the true ending of that issue, and I thought that was kind of neat because at the time you're like, what? And then it goes back to the normal story. You're like, what are you talking about? Well, now we see exactly what he was talking about. This is what those pages were meant to lead to and to show us. So this is something that's been in the planning for multiple years. I want to say he said at the panel 2006, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But I think is when he first started coming up with these concepts and coming up with this idea for the multiversity. I want to say it was back that far. And the fact that he started working on this concept back that far and he's just continuing going makes me, I wanted to pull out some of his other books that he's written and just see, okay, is there any connection going to be to multiversity in these other titles? And that's, again, it's, you never know where he's going to pull stuff from. You never know what he's going to do with this. That's part of the enjoyment of his books. It's part of the the anger and frustration sometimes because you're like, what are you saying? But when you get that click, when it finally does take place, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Callahan, who came on our show, remember when we talked about his books analyzing Grant Morrison?
Yeah.
He's done books through Sequart, and he's talked about the deeper themes that are connected between Morrison's work, that he tends to build on themes. But that's been clearly apparent in his DC work, where he's built on themes that he started right from the beginning of his original work at DC and just continued them going. He's an interesting read because of that. There's a challenge to reading him and trying to get to know his themes. I also find there's a great value in that, though. There's a reason to go back and reread his material all the way through, other material from the past, to see how it builds to stuff like this. And I like that. I mean, that, to me, nowadays we talk about the cover price of comics, and it's great there's a writer that's doing stuff like this. I wouldn't want everybody to do it. It doesn't work for everybody. This just happens to be Morrison's approach, and I like that it's unique. I think every writer that stands out, or a writer team that stands out, because, people like Grant Palmiotti are, a writing team. Whenever that happens, there's something unique about them and their approach that makes you come back and identify with what they do on everything they do. It's the reason why when Gray and Palmiotti do Kickstarters, for example, they do quite a few of them lately, of creator-owned material, I jump on every one of them. I barely read the blurb. Originally I read the blurb, but now they're at a point where I like their work so much that it just, okay, they're doing another Kickstarter, I'm in. I just want to be a part of it because I like them, and there's something to that value that I get from the enjoyment from their work. Very different than Morrison. They're their own unique. Gail Simone still remains my favorite writer. Gail Simone, I will read anything she's doing anywhere because it's going to be a unique Gail Simone experience. There's people, Tom King, we had him on. I read his book and got really into his work that way. That was the first step into his world for me. I read stuff that he did, the Valiant short stories. Now he's doing Grayson. He's somebody who's delivering for me. He's a new writer who's delivering for me in a way that, I didn't know previously. This is the kind of stuff, they start to develop their own identities and emotional resonance when you're done with their work that makes you want to follow further. Morrison's, it's this kind of stuff. Here, I'm anxious to see if somewhere along the line somebody has a problem with their numbering. You know what I'm saying? Like, we read Razor's Earth 36, Aquawoman's Earth 11. Why am I Earth 36? Is there a problem with that? Because typically, chronologically, you want to have the lower numbers, right? Yeah. I mean, isn't that it's usually a sign of something? And I'm surprised that nobody's mentioned. I wonder if somebody's going to at some point mention their numbering and maybe take some umbrage with the fact that they're right, their number's too high, or maybe they don't want it low.
Earth 1. Why can't we be the first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I never even thought of that, but that'd be kind of neat to see.
Yeah, because I know I would have a problem with our Earth if we were like, Earth 43.
I think he said we're 33, man.
No. I know. I'm just saying.
I'm saying 33. Why? The previous universe, weren't we Prime? Weren't we like Earth 0? But
I don't think there is an Earth Prime now, though, is there?
Yeah, no, there is no Earth Prime now. But we were up high, and now we got bumped down. We are the reason these universes exist. We should be, our numbers should be up there. We should be higher than 33. Come on. 33, it's a good solid number, but that's mid-pack. That's BC range. We are A plus players, man.
Jim, have you read any issues of our book?
No.
It's not as good as you think.
There's a reason we're 33, huh?
Dude, read our book and then read Earth 11. You'll understand. Dude, we got a rabbit that can get squashed and pop back up because of cartoon physics. We don't deserve to be higher than that.
Point taken. Okay.
I mean, dude, it's a rabbit who got squashed and popped back up and just had a one-liner for it. I mean, that's great. He wins. Honestly, in that moment, his Earth should have been bumped up a few numbers.
What Earth is he?
I don't know.
I don't think they said.
I don't think so either. Here's the thing. In that moment, I would have zero issue if they said, you know what? because of that line, we're bumping them up temporarily to Earth 1 until somebody can dethrone that.
Well, now that would be an interesting series or an interesting discussion or an interesting chat room. What would be your ranking based on coolness?
Yeah. In that moment, though, Captain Carrot won me over.
Yeah.
I like that we saw in that sequence where they were between the universes, in that bleed space. Yeah. We saw Earth 2. You got to see the Hawk Girl from Earth 2.
Yeah.
Isn't that who that is?
I think so. Hold on.
Over on the left-hand side there. They're in that yellow ship, and there's that like creature up above them. And over to the left, you see in the panel there, it looks like our Hawk Girl from Earth 2.
Yeah.
The current Earth 2 series.
I think so.
So this is back in 2006. I wonder what you go through when you start a series back then, and you're in a completely different DC universe. So what do you do to modernize the themes? Does that become limiting to you, or does it open things up a bit more? The fact that you can, as a writer, and then the artistic teams can go. I wonder how much they had to redo to reference the fact that there is a new 52 now.
I don't know, because you think about it, there's always was the multiversity. There always was these multiple worlds. So I think it just may be little tweaking here with imagery and whatnot, going through, okay, we said this was this Earth, we got to tweak it now. We got to change that. Like, who knows if Earth 23 was always designated as being that Superman. We know when the new universe rebooted, he was given that universe. But who knows before the reboot if he actually was 23. Maybe his number was 9 or something like that. So I wonder if because I think somewhere in one of the panels, in one of the cons, someone asked them, they said yes, they have a big board of the Earths and everything that's known there. They're tracking that. But how detailed and how exact and what tweaks have they made to it? I don't know.
Do you find that you enjoy Morrison's work more when you have a chance to talk about it?
Oh, definitely.
Because I'm sitting here as I'm going 100%. Through this, I'm like, I started off saying that I liked this series, and I didn't quite love it yet. Now that we're talking about this, I'm like, I think I love this. I really think I do. I'm like, wow, these are like really some interesting themes here. Because I'm at that bit on Earth 8 where we start seeing Lord Havoc, and I'm looking at that, which is clearly exploring Doctor Doom's thirst for cosmic power. Right. So we've got that. And we're seeing it from a DC lens because you've got characters coming in then from the multiverse to take a glimpse at this, and you got the Retaliators instead of the Avengers, and I liked all that stuff. It was really, really great. This opens up a whole different opportunity when finally we see Nyx, because Nyx was inside that cosmic egg. So we see Nyx pop in, and we see then that horror show at the end. Wow, I really liked this more than I realized. Because at the end of this, I'm like, wow, this really was an enjoyable experience. It took me a while to get here, though.
Oh, God, yeah. And it's, as I said, that page that was the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. I love that page because at first, because when I first saw Havoc, I was like, okay, that looks like a Doctor Doom type. And then when I got there, I was looking at it, wait a minute, they got a stretchy guy, they got a rock guy, and they got a fire guy. Oh, my God, that's the Fantastic Four. And I was like, that's neat. Again, then I went back a couple pages and I looked at the Retaliators. And that's when I realized, Hulk, Retaliators ready, Avengers assemble. Oh my God, this is the Marvel. And these past couple pages, I went back and I reread it again because normally I don't. Well, this was on the second read-through. First read-through, I always just plow right through and go from beginning to end and say, what the heck was that? So I was going back and forth. I'd read a couple pages, go back, reread. Oh, there's Hawkeye. There's Black Widow. Oh, that's kind of neat. And it was just something that I was enjoying with, but again, you got to read this a little bit differently because it's Grant Morrison. You got to read and take note and just, part of me wanted to start pulling out a notebook and start taking notes on this stuff because I think I get a better concept when I'm actually writing stuff down. And same thing with our discussion right now has helped me really appreciate this and enjoy this more. So it's, anybody, if you didn't read this or if you just skimmed it, you didn't do yourself a favor. You did yourself a disservice. Go back through, reread this a couple times, savor it, and as I said, I think issue 4 is going to be the number. I think that's where we'll really get a solid-ish grasp on what he's telling us, and we'll be able to go back through and reread 1 through 4 and say, oh, look at that. I didn't catch that before. That's kind of neat.
Have you seen the map of the multiverse?
Yes, I have.
I like that they map out not only the 52 worlds and some question marks that are in there, But they also map out things like hell, apocalypse, the underworld, dream, heaven, New Genesis, Skyland, Nightmare, Limbo, and the Source Wall, the Monitor Sphere. All these concepts are mapped out there. I like that they give that concept kind of an overview that I really enjoy. I think it's really just a neat thing to do here. It adds some depth to something that I think you need this as part of DC Comics. I'm a big fan of the multiverse. If you don't have this as a part of DC Comics, there's something missing. There's a theme missing that's a part of it. I think it adds a charm to it. It's something that's done in DC in a way that no other comic universe has been able to do it. It was the way that they explained their characters. Actually, your Doctor Who reference earlier was a really interesting connection because Doctor Who had a issue where its lead character was sick. Very, very sick. William Hartnell, the first Doctor. They didn't have that concept in place of regeneration until he got so sick that he wouldn't be able to continue the series. It was so popular that instead of recasting someone to play him, they introduced the idea of let's put a new actor in, and not only when he regenerates, not only does he have a new face, but the personality changes. It's the same man, but DC did this with when the Silver Age came about. They started relaunching some of their title characters. They modernized Batman and Superman. Then in The Flash, they said, well, what if Barry could meet Jay Garrick? And they broke down that wall and were like, well, these characters kept living. These ones that were our Golden Age characters, they kept on living in another world. So for people that were fans of that and grew up with that, now all of a sudden they find out their characters kept going. They got married. They had lives. Some of them died, and their sidekicks took over the lead platform there. And it became a whole, they did JSA, JLA crossovers and things like that. It introduced a whole booming concept that I grew up adoring. That's neat. And it's something that separates the two worlds. I'm a fan of Marvel. I love Marvel's books. I love the street level nature of them. They handle things and tackle them differently. If you have these two worlds bleed too closely together, where they become the same, there's a missing of the point of what unique strengths both worlds and both universes have. And introducing this again, to me, is exactly the kind of stuff that DC needs to reintroduce into the New 52 right now, which is why I'm glad this is out now. Good stuff. So overall, is this worth the wait to you?
Now, yes. Again, this was one of those, when I first read it, no, it wasn't. But now, and it had multiple read-throughs and our discussion as well. I'm the same place you are, where going into this discussion, I wasn't as excited for this title as after we've talked this out and thrown out a couple ideas and just had fun with it. I think that's part of the whole, process. I'm enjoying this more now than I did, an hour ago before we started talking. So this is something, and it's a Grant Morrison thing for me. It's you got to get talking, you got to get thinking about it, hear people's opinions, here's other comments and whatnot to really enjoy it. But for me, it's worth the wait, and I'm waiting for issue 4. I think that I really think that's the magic number.
You hit a word there. I think that's a critical key too. You got to have fun with it too. Sometimes with Morrison stuff, you can overthink it, and you stop having fun. If that makes sense. Morrison has fun when he writes. He likes to play with concepts. So we as the reader need to play along. And I think it's really a key. I find, like, during this discussion, we started laughing more about things that were happening in the story and relaxing about these concepts. And I think that's part of the shared experience that we had in this discussion. Probably why I'm at the end, I'm like, wait a minute, I think I kind of love this. Where at the beginning, I started off with, and it was a very true emotion where I liked it, but I didn't love it. Now at the end of this discussion, I can honestly say that I can't wait for issue 2. I love that Doc Fate and all of that, kind of going back to like a Doc Savage kind of concept in that world. I'm anxious to see where that goes. I liked it on the covers. They have highlighted the worlds that are populating in the series, the ones we get to see spotlighted in the series. I think that's a neat thing that they're doing on the covers. I can't wait for more. I really want to see more of what's going on. And you're right, this discussion changed a lot of things because I am in a very different place right now. Because I think I kind of love this.
Yes.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
Our next discussion will be on Batman Eternal number 21, the story by Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV, with scripts by James Tynion, with consulting writers Ray Fawkes, John Layman, Tim Seeley, art by Jason Fabok, colors by Brad Anderson, DZ Cienti as a letterer, Dustin Nguyen on cover with Matt Humphreys, assistant editor, Chris Conroy, editor, Mark Doyle, group editor, and of course, Batman was created by Bob Kane.
I really, really, really loved this issue. I've been enjoying this series overall just because it's been really heavy hitting. I mean, the first 20 issues in with the stuff that was going on with Gordon, and we got to see Barbara have this great moment with Batwoman and with Jason Todd. The evolution of Jason Todd. I know I'm kind of going to things that have happened before, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how much I enjoyed the fight between Jason and Batgirl where he needed to reach her, where he needed to show, hey, I was Robin, and when I was Robin, I was present, I was there, I mattered, I remember everything, I got to know Barbara real well, I know her photographic memory, I'm going to reach her in a way that reminds you that I was Robin and I mattered. I loved that as a reader to see that. There's something important to me about that as a longtime Batman reader that, okay, we've compressed the Robin storyline. I get all that. Jason Todd, he's become such an identity as the Red Hood and as the Robin that died. We forget that he was Robin. And in that moment, they reminded us of that, but also showed he's now a part of the Bat family again. He is the black sheep of the family, so to speak, but he's still there. He and Bruce have interactions now. He is a member of the team that he can call on, and I love that. I like seeing him in this role. I like that it was built over time. It wasn't something that you light switched. That's important. That has value, and it works really well here. The connection with the storyline with Barbara, though, where she was saying you aren't Dick Grayson, that type of thing, and him connecting with that and reaching out and showing how much her words affected him, but also that he has this kind of love for her in the sense that, and respect for her. He looks up to her. Like, we don't do the ballet that she does. She was always better than us. There was that element of that.
Yeah.
Seeing her defined that way by Jason Todd, who often avoids showing that side, was something to me. It added more value, I think, to Barbara Gordon in those moments than anything I've read in the longest time. It builds onto, I'm a big fan of the Batgirl book. I've always dug her. But when you see it through Jason Todd's lens, this, smarmy Jason Todd, all of a sudden going, she was always better than us. We could never do that ballet that she does. This takes themes that have been explored so well in Batgirl's solo title, shows that editorials bringing them in to Batman Eternal, increasing them. When you have crossovers like this, and you have an advantage to have these characters interacting with each other, if you don't take an opportunity to spotlight what creators have done, have been working on these characters, you're missing the boat. They didn't do that here. It was really great. I loved what they did with Barbara Gordon in those moments. Okay, yeah. And Jason Todd. I thought Jason Todd shined for me. I love him in this role.
Yeah, it's weird. Batman Eternal kind of got stockpiled because I was out of town and I had all this trip, so I had 4 issues to go through, and I sat down and I just went boom, 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 one after another. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. So I read throughout that whole the team, Batgirl, Batwoman, and Red Hood, just that whole crossover and that whole team up that they were going on, plus the jailbreak and the prison riots, all these big events happening in Batman Eternal. I got to read them from start to finish in one sitting. So for me, those are some great stuff. And I absolutely love how Jason is being handled here, and how he's being handled now in Red Hood, how he's being handled whenever he appears in other titles. We are getting to see that really cool Jason Todd that still has a bit of his edge, that still has a little bit of his, he has to be reminded, hey, don't kill him, so they're still not completely the code of the bat, but you can see he is a good guy. He is one of the good guys. He is, trying to make things a little bit better in the world. Sometimes you got to get a little bit nasty. Sometimes you got to go to a darker place, and he'll go there. But he doesn't live there. That's not his existence. He's not an evil guy. And those moments between him and Barbara were just absolutely just beautiful, wonderful, where he's sitting there fighting her, and she's extremely dangerous. And I love the fact that he even made the slight comment, I'm not even going to bring up the fact that how wrong it is that you think I'm the Joker. Just that whole connection between him and the Joker. But then as he's just throwing out when they first met, when he first got to know that Barbara Gordon was Batgirl, when those first interactions, and it's something that lets you know how important it was to him. And that's something that would reach Barbara. That's something she would be able to use and fight through the mind control just because of that personal connection. I just love seeing that. And that was just something I was like, dang, this is awesome. And then you go right from that coolness right into 21, where we kind of get this great, I want to say like the first story arc or the first act where we start seeing who the real bad guys are, who Batman is up against by the end of this issue. And I thought that for me was like, oh man, this is awesome. I can't wait for 22.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about this series is we're gradually building more and more of the Bat mythos into it. And by doing that, we're making a threat that's so big that Batman can't handle it alone. There's a reason why we need so many characters in this storyline on Batman's team, because there's so much going on. Every twist and turn, we're finding every part of Gotham has been corrupted. So this really is not just a taking down of sections of Gotham. This is not the police versus the bad guys. This is the police, the bad guys being linked. Every time a new villain comes in, they don't know the whole story. They're being brought in as a foil that further expands the nightmare that's being crafted here. This is really a dangerous world that we're seeing. It's Gotham kicked up to 11. I love that. When we see characters in there like Deacon Blackfire, like, there's that whole supernatural thing going on that's overwhelming Batwing. And we're seeing parts where potentially is Batwing going to die? And I was like, whoa. Because that one sequence, I'm like, are we going to see the end of Batwing? I don't know. That stuff was all things I was really, really enjoying. I liked seeing how that played out. I like seeing Hush introduced in this issue, obviously, I know, and I don't jump into that, but we might as well talk about it because I didn't expect him. Because at some point in time, they said Hush isn't the big bad, so I guess that I assumed that meant that Hush wouldn't be a part of this. Seeing him brought into this, though, he probably got a similar invite to this whole dance that Falcone did.
Yeah.
But he's being brought in from a different angle and asked to take out Alfred. And what is that going to do to Alfred? He was injected in the brain with a full dose of fear toxin. What is that going to do to Alfred in the long run? How are we going to bring Alfred back? The fact that he reaches out to his daughter at that point and tells her the code to get into the basement, to get into the Bat Cave, was something where I knew in that moment that Alfred's going to be on the shelf for a good portion of this series.
My guess is Alfred's out for the rest of Batman Eternal. That his daughter is going to take over Penny One, and she's going to be the eyes and ears in the cave. So next time Bruce calls into the cave calling for Penny One, it ain't going to be Alfred. It's going to be her. And he's going to, and I'm assuming an anti-fear toxin, injected directly into the brain, but it's going to take some time because that's got to be super dosage or maybe a little fear toxin plus a little bit of a Hush, twist to it. So there's going to be a little bit of change. So I think Alfred's out for a while. But again, Hush didn't plan for the daughter being there. No. Hush didn't plan for this because she's something that nobody knew about, that she was a complete surprise on all pages. So guess what? They didn't plan for her, so now they've got a little bit of a wiggle there. And I think there's going to be other little surprises that are going to pop up here and there that, and I think that's the fact that this Batman is willing to be a team. This Batman is willing to have his people out there. And that's going to be the strength of this Batman Eternal. Isn't just that Batman kicks butt, it's Batman and his team, all together. He works together as a team now. He is more of a team player than he ever was in the past. So that, I think, is going to be the strength of this book and the strength of why that they're able to eventually overcome the big bad, whoever that the true big bad is.
Now, the big bad knows that Bruce is Batman.
Yeah.
Because we saw that right from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So this is interesting how this attack's going on and how that information's being utilized. Did you see Jason Bard coming?
No. I honestly thought he was going to be a good guy.
I did too. I did not see that coming.
100% thought he was going to be a good guy because there was so many Gordon-esque traits to this guy. And I was like, man, this is going to be, and it was one of those things that the split second before the turn happened is when I realized it. Up until issue, through like 3/4 of 21. I didn't realize it, but it wasn't until right before we see him break the little thing, break the zip drive that Bruce gives him, that we see, okay, he is really the bad guy, or he's on the bad guy. It was like right before that I started getting the groove of, is he a good guy? No, he's a good guy. And as I'm reading the issue, I keep thinking to myself, no, he's a good guy. He's one of the good guys. But then you get the confirmation, no, he's not. He's on the bad guy's side. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, not only, and here's the funny thing, is he's not the big bad.
No.
He knows who the big bad is, but he is not, in fact, the big bad. I loved that.
See, I took it he was taking orders from Hush. Because you see the one page, hold on, we go to we go to his reveal, and I thought it's when he's talking to somebody.
Mother. He referenced Mother.
Mother, yes.
So, who's Mother?
But see, Mother, he's talking to someone right outside of Wayne Manor, and there's a ambulance there, so that's, I guess, the ambulance they called for Alfred. Because I'm assuming that's Wayne Manor, but it may not be Wayne Manor, or it may just be a castle-looking building.
No, it could be Wayne Manor, but here's the thing. I don't know that I believe that Hush is running everything. Like, I think that Hush is being utilized by whoever Mother is. And is Mother really in charge, or is there somebody else? I don't know. I'm very anxious to see where this storyline is going and who Bard really is. Because I have a funny feeling there's a reveal to come there as far as who Bard really is. I'm intrigued by this. Like, I start to get ideas as far as what I think might be going on, and then they change the rules on me.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm a big fan of that. Bruce is radar, noting that I don't trust you yet, Bard, but he gave him the drive because he said, this clears Gordon. And in many ways, it was a good test, to see, what are you going to do with this? When he walked past the cell, I wanted to hit Bard with a shoe. Because I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding. And I gotta be honest, in that moment, I felt that coming.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's being too vague. We're not mentioning Gordon's name. The way that was all playing out,
Yeah, because he first hands the warden release papers, and as he's walking, they show Jim Gordon standing, and then he walks past, and right there, I was like, "Is he a bad guy?"
And the look on Gordon's face when he walked past too,
right? No comfort, no nothing for Gordon. Hey, don't worry about this, Jim. We're working on this. Nothing. I was like, that's the first time I think I said, "Is he a bad guy?"
Yeah.
And then you see him go to the architect. You see him go to the gate, from Gotham Gates, the gates of Gotham, which, again, I was like, oh, that's cool. They're pulling back that story that was, from back when, oh, God, it's been a while, a couple of years since the gates of Gotham came out.
Well, that was Snyder and Higgins.
Yeah. Like, we need an architect. I'm like, oh, my God. He is a bad guy. What the heck,
So this is all going to be very, very interesting.
And the fact that it's swerving, it's still swerving. We're issue 21, and we're still getting the swerves in. That I was like, man, that is just that for me is a good, just a well-crafted, just outline and story, and just everywhere they want to go with this story. They really laid this out exactly how they want this to play out. Now,
wait a second. I'm going to go back to something you're saying and agree with you. Mother is Hush, which is what you were pointing out earlier, which I don't know why I didn't connect that. I must have had a brain freeze or something during that, because I'm looking at right now, is it done? And he's talking to Hush, and that's outside Wayne Manor. You're right. Okay. Hush is right outside Wayne Manor, because the ambulance is there, probably for Alfred, because of the daughter. Because of the panic room, Hush isn't aware of the daughter. So my question becomes, what is the relationship between Bard and Hush? It says, next, find out who Gotham really belongs to. I feel like do you feel like there's something more there?
Yeah. Yeah, because I wasn't thinking, well, I thought it'd be neat that if Hush was the big bad, but I remember them saying Hush isn't the big bad. There's somebody else. And part of me is wondering if we're going to get Owlman, if he's the big bad, because he would know all the secrets. Or is there somebody else that's coming down the line that's going to be the big bad for everything?
I don't know. The question goes back to who is Bard?
Yeah.
I want to know that. And that's where the storyline really is strength. Because, they're going to the gates. They have a beef. Obviously, they have a major beef with him, and I can't wait to see what it is.
Yeah, this, again, when they first started this whole thing up, we were wondering, okay, what's this going to be, yada, yada. And just as the story's playing out, it's something that has really, really impressed me. It's visually, it looks cool. So artistically, give full credit and full props to all the various art teams working on this project, but also just this massive story that they laid out. And now that's being crafted and flowed through. I wonder how do you come up with this? How do you approach a concept like this? How do you actually look at this type of stuff? Because that in itself has to be this huge, massive, daunting task. This is, if this was a traditional monthly comic, this would be 5 years in the making. But instead, they're throwing it out there, in a little bit over a year, that they're going to actually craft the story. So
you were a reader of the Superman books back when there was the Shield numbering.
Yes.
Where you got this kind of storytelling done quite a bit. You can tell a longer form, bigger story because of that. We're getting that right now in the Superman books with the Doomed storyline. Because of the fact that it's going between so many different books, and you're getting things, happening in Superman, Wonder Woman. You're getting things happening in Supergirl, in Action Comics. There's a lot of storyline going on there. Because of that, you're getting to tell a bigger story, something with more depth, more sense of scope and scale. That's happening here, and it's being done so well in this particular book. I actually really liked Batman 34 because of the fact that it brings it up to speed with what's going on in this book right now. There's something to that, to seeing what's going on, realizing this is real time. This is what's happening in Batman's world at the moment, and I can't wait to see where this is going to go. I'm confused right now, because I guess here's where my brain freeze came in. Because of the fact that they were saying that Hush isn't the big bad, I think when he kept saying, yes, mother, I was so focused on Bard in that moment, and I've been focused on Bard, that I wasn't paying as much attention to that singular panel up at the top where it is clearly Hush. And I guess I was dismissing the idea that Hush would be the guy running Bard. Oof. I don't know what's going on there, because Hush has a bigger role than we're realizing. I was assuming Hush was invited to the dance. I don't know that he was. I think he's one of the bigger players in this.
He may be the big bad, and just when they said he wasn't the big bad, that was just a swerve. They're throwing.
They did it.
Because that very easily could be the fact. Hush could be the big bad. This could be the return of Hush in the New 52. Because I don't think we've seen signs of Hush since the reboot, have we?
No.
So this could be the return of Hush. That in itself would be a neat way to bring Hush back in a massive Batman story. But I still hold on to the fact that there's some other big bad out there. There's somebody else out there running and calling the shots that's planned and laid out all of the game plan on this. And I'm assuming the next couple issues we're going to see who that big bad is. If it's not Hush, we're going to see exactly who is running the show, who is calling the shots.
Penguin, the Lion, Falcone, and Gordon. Oh my. I mean, that whole bit, I don't want to walk away without discussing that, because I thought it was some great Jim Gordon moments, reminding us what Jim Gordon brings to the table. What he was doing when he was doing the Chicago special, swinging around that fire extinguisher and stuff like that, I thought was really, really great. Because we were, often we need to be reminded. We did Batman and Robin recently, talking about that, and one of the things you brought up about that movie series that you didn't like is there was never a chance for Jim Gordon to shine. We didn't get these kind of moments. And I would argue that some of the themes we're seeing with Alfred and his daughter in this are also themes in Batman and Robin that we enjoyed, that we wish they were able to explore more. This is a great example on how to take those concepts and do them right. Because they're really doing them right here with some serious depth. Like, what's going on with Alfred and his daughter, she's going to get it now. And kind of go to this realization, oh, wow.
There's something here.
Yeah. They basically took Schumacher and fixed it. They did. It's like right here. I mean, the stuff that they're doing right now is exactly everything we liked about that movie, done right without the nonsense surrounding it. And this is where it really works well in a deep arc like this. I am so anxious to see what happens with these characters moving forward. Because what's Bruce going to do when he realizes about Gordon? Because that's going to come very quick. Because Gordon should be released immediately, not being charged. Gordon was charged. They should have become, somebody should have been running in there going, no, you're not going to charge him right now. We're not going to, put him on death watch. We are going to release him.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and the only thing I can think, the only way I could come up with that Bard's going to be able to protect his cover is if he says the fact that the information was gained by the vigilantes. The fact that the evidence that the person who is the main witness who had these powers, who actually did it, is now dead. They've got nothing that would work in an actual court of law, and I think that is his only defense that he's going to have. That's saying, because there's going to be the confrontation between Bruce and him saying, "Hey, I gave you the evidence. Well, I can't use it. It's inadmissible. You're not a cop. You're a vigilante who beat somebody up and who handed me something on a drive. There's no way we could prove this, use this to prove it. We know the truth." But right now, we don't have a legal standpoint here. I think that's going to be his only defense, which, yes, is true, but that's not going to curb, Batman's mistrust and questioning, and that's going to get Bruce looking heavy into Bard, and we're going to see Bruce look into who is Bard, what's going on here. Is this guy really not an ally?
Yeah, I agree. And that part, that's where things get interesting to me. They really, really get interesting. When you start exploring stuff like that, this is a really, really good series. Yeah. Here's what works about this series. This series is all about showing you why sometimes you need to do longer form storytelling with multiple issues being released each month. You want that immediacy. This is real time. It's a lot more like the TV series 24 than a monthly delivery of a comic. I like that it's story driven. We're going to talk next about Supergirl. And I think we should jump to that next because it's another example of a story being told in a crossover. And why is there value to that? Well, as long as it's story-driven, you're going to take readers and say, okay, for the next couple of months, you're going to buy books that you don't normally buy because we're going to deliver a storyline to you. That's a crossover. So you may be an Action Comics reader, for example, and we're going to ask you to pick Superman, Wonder Woman up, and Supergirl. And the reason, and also some bookend issues that are going to help you close out this storyline. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we're telling something large that's of value. I think they've done that here. I think they've done this with Batman Eternal. They've made it worth spending the money on a weekly book. I think Superman Doomed also is doing that with that story. It has to be story-driven, though, and it has to be a story of value. If you're doing it and there's no depth to it, people get mad fast. If you do it and there's value to the story, people all of a sudden start feeling, well, this is worth it. Look at the meat and potatoes that I'm getting that month in my character that I'm knowing and loving. That's really where you need to be careful with this. You need to be judicious with it so that way you don't offend your readers, but you're also giving something to them that makes them feel like this is of value. I think this is. How do you feel whenever you have to do crossovers like this? Do you enjoy this type of thing?
Well, yeah, actually, I do enjoy them. But you kind of hit the nail on the head there. That you got to have something. It's not just a story. There's got to be something more to it. There's got to be some meat on the plate there. Because if it's just it's okay. It's a neat story. Yeah, I enjoyed reading it. That's one thing. But I got to put it down. And go whoa, like Batman Eternal 21. I put it down. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. That right there validated me buying this book. That right there made me realize, yes, there's a reason I'm picking this up. The Superman Doom stories. I was getting all those titles anyway, so I was like, yeah, that's one thing. But as I started sitting down and reading them, I started seeing the evolution of Supergirl. I started seeing some cool Superman moments, some just his interaction of all the different people that we've seen throughout the beginning of this Superman run come back to play, and stories, and just going back to the past and pulling it forward. Like, okay, this right here, this is some cool stuff. I'm really digging this whole Superman Doom thing, and I'm picking up the different pieces. And it was something I was like, yes, I would want to keep reading the story, see where it goes to. It's got to have that hit. It's got to have that bite to it. And we're definitely getting that in Eternal, and we're definitely getting that in Doomed as well.
Hey, it's funny now that you're mentioning some of this. One of the things that's popping up before we go to talk about Supergirl, at the end of issues now, we're seeing that blurb happen because next month, actually next week, is going to be the first batch of books we're going to start receiving with that 5 year later jump, where we have that single issue that tells us what may be happening to our characters in 5 years. I'm excited for that. I'm really, really excited for that. It's part of the event of the weekly book is going to be that all the titles are going to address where these characters are going in 5 years. Are you into that? I'm really into it now, more so than I think I even was.
Yeah, actually, this is something that's built for me. And the weekly series has helped me get ready for this jump, get ready, to see where it's going to. initially when they first said they were jumping 5 years forward, I was like, yeah, okay, that'd be kind of neat. But then I started, again, it's one of those things where I started looking at it and started thinking about it from the overall, is this a good idea mindset? And you think about people who are only getting one or two titles. Are they going to, if they're not getting this full overall story, if they're not getting this future end story, if they're not reading it, when they get that jump forward, what are they going to get from it? What are they going to get out of it? Like you and me, we're going to get something more out of it because we're getting all these titles. We're getting the new 52 Futures End series. We're getting but the everyday reader who has like 2 or 3 comics in their pull list, what are they going to get out? And that's what I'm curious to see what stories get told and how the stories get told. And I think that's going to be the tough sell. The people who are getting 1 or 2 titles, what will they think about it?
Well, it's only going to affect their book. Like, for example, Supergirl's going to have a 5-year later jump. So if you only read Supergirl, let's use Supergirl's example because we're going to read that next. It's going to tell us what her life's going to be like in 5 years.
But it's one of those, yeah, and I agree with you.
It's not an overarching story. It's just going to be her jump 5 years, and then they're going to go back to normal continuity.
Yeah, but that jump is the question. Like, with us, we see the big picture of the jump. If someone's not seeing the big picture of the jump, what will they just say, what the heck's this? Or will they understand what's going on? Will there be confusion? What's going to be for the people who only are 1 or 2 titles?
I would hope, addressing what you're saying, that let's say they're not. So you're saying the people that aren't reading Futures End, right?
Exactly.
Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
I would hope at the beginning of the issue, and we're not going to know until we see the first one of these released, there would be some form of blurb that addresses what the issue is. This is, a 5-year jump. It's, a possible future for Supergirl, or, a glimpse into the future of Supergirl. Something that would let a reader of only this title know what's going on. They've done events like this before in DC history, where, it's been a look into the far future. When they did the 1 million story, Grant Morrison's DC 1 million story, each of the titles did a 1 million issue, which was a glimpse into the far future of that particular book or that particular character strand. It worked because those issues. Actually, I should say it depended on the writer and how involved they were in the overarching story, because some of them really just embraced the whole concept and told a 1 million version of their character set in that world, and it was very contained, very self-contained. So a book like Supergirl, I largely suspect it's going to be very self-contained, but editorial, if they're smart, which I'm sure they're going to be on this one, in Supergirl's case, I'm sure there's going to be elements of that will echo things that are going on in the Superman books and how Kara's world reacts to that and relates to it. Because Cyborg Superman's going to be in this. So there's going to be some interesting paths, I think, explored, where I think if you're reading Superman, you're going to get some value out of it in a way that a person who isn't reading Superman isn't going to get. But I think if you're a Supergirl reader, it's going to be largely satisfying. It's Tony Bedard. I'm assuming he's writing the...
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be great. So, I mean, I think it's going to depend on the writer and how well they embrace that. I would imagine in most cases, though, they would be crazy if they don't theme it to their particular book. Similar, Zero Year. Batman Zero Year. Remember when they had those Zero Year books?
Right.
If you read Green Lantern Corps and the Jon Stewart issue, you didn't have to be reading Zero Year in order to pick up on that Jon Stewart story that was there.
Exactly.
If you were, it added something else to it. But you and I talked about that. We read those books like in whatever order we wanted, and it just worked great. So I would, if they don't do this, I'm speculating. I'm assuming they're going to do something similar. If they don't do it that way, that would be insane because you're going to really upset a lot of people. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think it's going to be they're just having fun with the theme. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Oh yeah. I thought that was the ending.
No, it's okay because you were the one that brought up that there might be an issue there, and I don't think there's going to be. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's not, but it's one of those things that I've noticed. One of the things I started doing was I started looking at, is this good for business? Is this right for business? And I started looking at it beyond just my sit down and reading and enjoyment of it. And those are the kind of things that the first thing that people complain about are the big crossovers, or stuff that you and I love. That it's the event, the universe-wide event where every issue is messing with it, or every issue is commenting on it. Stuff we love. That's one of the first things that people complain about. And I don't. And at first I was like, I don't get it. But then I started thinking about it and trying to put myself in their shoes. If I'm only reading this one title and I have this massive event that's going across all the titles, I'm like, hey, I don't care about that. If it's not directly affecting my character, why am I doing this? Let's just continue on with my story.
But for a majority of the readers, think about it. How many people are probably reading Future's End that maybe aren't reading some of these other titles? So from a business standpoint, is it good for business? Here's where it's good for business. Because you're doing this overarching event, people who are reading Future's End that maybe aren't reading, let's use Supergirl. Let's just keep going back to that. Maybe aren't reading Supergirl. Might pick up Supergirl because she's got a Future's End issue and potentially might really like it. And if they do, what are they inclined to do? Potentially keep reading Supergirl.
Right.
So that's their hope when they do stuff like this. And it seems to be their theme. Let's do a September event that'll get people interested in trying out some of the other titles to see if maybe there's one that they're not reading now that might be that one that'll grab them. Because the titles have changed drastically since the beginning of the New 52. There's a lot of books that maybe if you read it with issue 1, you maybe didn't like it then, but maybe now with the new theme and the new direction that it's going in, you will like it. Here's a great example. Batgirl is going to have a new creative team as of the October issue. So for this event, people who maybe weren't reading Batgirl before, this might be a chance for them to try out Batgirl with a new creative team. Why you weren't reading Batgirl before, I don't know, because Batgirl's been absolutely phenomenal. But it's maybe for somebody that was like, all right, there's been there's a lot of continuity to Batgirl that I don't want to jump back on. It's a starting point to that series. So there's some changes that are happening that are coming up that might interest people in some of those books. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening with that event. So from a sales standpoint, it's only going to be successful if after that event, people are reading some books that they didn't read before.
Right.
Even if it's just one. If it's one, if they've got a lot of readers who've just picked up one more title than they were picking up before, it's a victory. That's the hope.
That's the hope. And again, I don't know if it's going to work. But again, I'm not, for me, I'm like, cool, let's see what happens. I'm curious what's going to happen to these different characters, and I'm looking forward to it. But I always do. I always do think about just the one book person, the 2-book title. And there's nothing wrong with being a 2-book title. That's your groove. That's the character you like. Hey, I say enjoy it. If you're having fun, cool. Mm-hmm. But I always wonder these type of events. How do they feel? Because I can't put myself in their shoes. I can't put myself. I can't think like them.
I can. I've been that person before, because of budget.
Yeah,
I've been that person before, and invariably what ends up happening with those events, I can't. Here's a great example. I'll use Secret Wars 2 as an example. Okay, I was a Marvel reader at the time. I had a couple DC books. I was reading a couple Marvel. So I was reading 3, maybe 4 books at the most at the time, if I was lucky. And that changed from month to month. Some months it was 2. I wasn't always able to get every single issue of every title I wanted. So Secret Wars 2 came out, and I liked the first Secret War, so I ended up grabbing that event. And, whatever, if you read that event and you loved it or hated it or fell somewhere in the middle, it's irrelevant. What ended up happening was during that event, because I was reading that event, I ended up picking up some of the Marvel titles that I hadn't read before because I wanted to know something else about what the Beyonder was doing. Because he was on... Did you read that ever? Do you know
what, Secret Wars 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Beyonder came to Earth.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so there were titles from Marvel that I ended up reading that I never read before just because there was a thread with the Beyonder that was going into that book that I'm like, okay, I want to follow this. The way that story was crafted, you didn't necessarily have to read everything, but I ended up grabbing a few more Marvel titles, and I ended up sticking with those books, because I was into the story, and largely what ended up happening was it introduced me to a title from Marvel that I had never read before because of the fact that I never had the kind of budget where I could. I ended up grabbing and going on with that. So I do think that works. It's an interesting market right now for that because you have a crabby internet culture that I think... I'm being serious about that in the sense that there's nothing about this 5 Year Later event. Let's talk about reality. There's nothing about this 5 Year Later event that's coming up that says you have to pick up anything more than your budget. You don't. I'm gonna bring the harsh reality to it. If you're not reading Future's End, do you have to pick up 8 other books? No. Do you even have to pick up that 5-year later issue. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because in most cases, remember we had Tom King on, and he was talking about his issue and how there's going to be themes that are touched on in his book there. I think it's going to echo that overall 5-year later event, but it's really going to have some things that, for Grayson readers, they're going to be really thinking it's cool. So it's going to be a worthwhile issue for people that are reading Grayson. Do you have to read any other titles in order to enjoy that if you're reading Grayson right now? No. That's just a reality. Next month, the book will be back to its regularly scheduled programming, already in progress, and that's fine. I do think some readers get upset with that. Jim, you're right. I remember John Byrne did a series called Genesis, and different books had a Genesis issue. Some of them were really good. Some of them were fluff and just derailed the book for a month. That happens, you know, when you have those crossovers sometimes. And that, I think, upsets me more than anything else. I want a good story. So if you're going to play in the sandbox, deliver a good story in the sandbox. So I think the issues that deliver a good story, people are going to walk away largely satisfied with. The issues that do not deliver a good story, people are not going to be satisfied with. If you are in the middle of a story arc that's part 2 of a 4-part story arc, and that 5-year later issue derails that storyline for a month, people might be upset with that. But I'm noticing a lot of my storylines, a lot of the arcs are ending before that issue. Which is a brilliant move, because if you're going to put let's take a break for a moment and take a look at 5 years in the future, it's a lot easier to take and a lot easier to get into when your arc just finished than when it didn't. So, I don't know. I like these events. I think they're good. I do think in the past, for me as a reader, and I'm not saying everyone has to have this same thing, because what you're talking about really is going to be different from reader to reader. But for me, I know it's always gotten me to try a book or two that I've never tried before. And I think that's where it's a success when they do it. And I think comic companies have seen that that's a way to do it. There is that business model end of comics that if somebody's reading 2 books, they want them reading 3. and why wouldn't you? I mean, they would be stupid as a company to just go, oh, we're content with you just reading 2 books. No, they're not. They would like you to like what you're doing so much that if you have room in your budget for a 3rd book, that you will pick up a 3rd book and hopefully consider that well worth the money that you're spending on it. And that's only going to happen if the creators are delivering good stories. So that will ultimately decide whether or not, Jim, this is a successful event. If they're delivering good enough stories that maybe get a couple people reading a book or 2 they didn't before, that would be of value. We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm curious to see how this plays out.
Let's talk about Supergirl 34, if we could. The Girl Who Fell to Earth.
Oh, yeah.
Tony Bedard is the writer. Carl Moline on pencils. Jose Marzan Jr. is on inks. Hi-Fi is the colorist. Rob Lay letterer. Cameron Stewart with Nathan Fairbairn on the cover. Ricky Purdon, associate editor. Eddie Berganza is the group editor. Superman, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Supergirl, based on the characters created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. Now, when it says Supergirl based on them, who created Supergirl? I'm questioning that now.
Yeah, because there should be an entity, or did it just... Is there not one person who said, hey, this is the creator? Was she appeared here, appeared there? How do you figure out who creates something?
I'm going to butcher his name too, and he's a comic legend. Otto Binder, Binder, and I feel terrible. Kurt Swan was on the art. That's who created Supergirl. So we're going back into, the classic characters in the late 50s, it looks like. Supergirl's first appearance was 1958, it looks like. And I feel bad that I butchered the name because it's just a comics legend. This is part of the problem. When I was a kid growing up, I formed my own pronunciation of people's last names. And I still, to this day, I've heard the real pronunciations of their names through various documentaries. But now I'm confused because I don't know if I've got in my head the version I heard from a documentary or the version that I butchered growing up my whole life. I don't know if you run into that. I do, because, for years, a lot old Supergirl is a great example. I read a lot of that stuff from flea markets. I would read the creative team whenever it was available, and I would get the name in my head and really mess it up, and it's so ingrained in me that I have trouble letting it go. And which I feel bad about, because these are legends or people who've created stories that, even if you didn't read the originals, I love Supergirl right now. There wouldn't be a Supergirl if they hadn't created that concept. I know I butcher it. What are you thinking of Doomed? The Doomed storyline?
Oh, I'm loving the Doomed storyline. I'm absolutely just loving the storyline. And it was one of those things that when they first started it, I was like, okay, what are they doing here? Okay, Doom coming back. Hey, then just he breaks him up, infects him, and then he starts turning, and just like, oh my god! And they're jumping through the different titles, and they started going from one to the other to the other. And again, it was something that I talked about just minutes ago. That if you're gonna make me jump between title to title to title, give me something that hits. Mm-hmm. Give me a reason to do those jumping around. Make it be a point, and it's not just to sell comics. It's not just to cross. It's part of the story. And this is something that you think about it. We're getting multiple chapters of the Doom storyline that was told through 3 different books. So if they just kept it in the Superman title, if they just told it in the Superman title, this story would take over a year to actually tell. But now, because they're using the 3 different books, we're getting it told in a couple months. We're getting this story where you go part 1, part 2, part 3, bookend, part 1, part 2, part 3, ending bookend. And I like how they did this. I like just this feel and this vibe that we're getting through this.
I love when we're in Queens, New York, and we see, the guy in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
He's the first one that came in there, and he helped Superboy. Ended up having a lead-lined blanket that ended up helping her to start recovering. We see a recap of everything that she's gone through, which is a really smart move at this point, because with this crossover, you figure, again, there's going to be people reading this issue that maybe weren't reading Supergirl. They didn't read the Red Lantern saga for Supergirl. This is a great way to bring them up to speed on where she's at, continuity-wise, which I think is really important to do. They do that in a 1-page blurb. I liked it as a recap as well, because I've been really enjoying the storyline. But it also brings Supergirl readers up to speed on what's been going on in the Doom storyline. You haven't been reading it? This is a great place to get on board with it. If you're a Supergirl reader and you're going to jump off at this point and just keep reading Supergirl, you're being given enough information that you're not going to be offended, like you were mentioning earlier, if that makes sense. Right. This is a great way to deal with what you were talking about, where this is moving Supergirl forward. It's addressing everything that she's been through, but at the same time, it's addressing a number of different reader types that are touching on this book. Very well handled in this issue.
Yeah, and again, I like the fact that we get these personal moments. We get these cool moments of her hanging out with this kid in this, in the wheelchair, the kid who was injured. And I love the first time when she first hears about the injury, she's like, I didn't do that. And there's that initial fear in her eyes, like, oh crud, did I just hurt? Am I the reason this kid's in this chair? And I like that this character, she's now starting to have she's now starting to understand the human. She's now starting to have that humanity, and she's starting to have these really cool inner reactions. This is something that when she was first introduced, she was completely distant because she's Kryptonian. She didn't understand culture. She didn't understand anything about these humans. Well, now not only does she understand them, she's got that compassion. She's got that, just that what you would expect from a super, what you would expect from someone from the House of L, someone who's got the big red S on her chest. Guess what? She's got to have these levels of humanity in her. And I love seeing those glimpses. I love seeing when she's telling the story to him and just filling him in. And even that point where he's like, so are you like brother, boyfriend? He's my cousin. I like the fact that she is, sharing everything with this kid who she acknowledges, I don't know why I'm telling this kid this stuff, but it is something that, there is a comfort here. There is a trust, and she's starting to understand that humans can be trusted.
Yeah, that part, here's what's happening, and I'm really liking this. Supergirl's becoming likable.
Yes.
And there needs to be, I've always liked this Supergirl. Since the New 52 has launched her, Supergirl's been a compelling series that I've really enjoyed. When I say she's becoming likable, in the sense that she's starting to like humans, she's starting to become more accessible. She's evolving into a superhero, where before she was a super-powered alien who really was an alien to our world. She looked at our world through an alien lens. I found that compelling in the beginning. But we're gradually seeing her over time start to adopt Earth as a home. Yeah. And it's gradual. It's over time. The interactions with Michael are a great example of that. She's seeing a strength and something to admire in Michael in their interactions between the two. There's something endearing there that's going on between the two of them that I really like. This issue in particular, I thought was a complete home run. I really liked what was going on with her and Michael. Like, I hope this is a character that comes back again because I really dug him in this issue.
Oh, he's definitely coming back. There's no way they spent this much time with her and him, and just the ending with the kiss, and just that they're just going to let this go. This is going to be her connection. It's going to be a further connection to humanity. I'm thinking off page already, like, because is she going to sit there and say, hey, maybe with Kryptonian knowledge and technology, maybe she can fix the guy, fix the back, and make it so he can walk again, and just. Or will she not go that route? Because you always have that moral ambiguity of what is the appropriate level of help to do for people. With Kryptonian technology, they got to be able to fix the bone structure. They got to be able to fix the nerve endings. They got to be able to fix all the muscle fiber and whatnot that would cause, that injury, that kind of injury would have where he would be required to be in the chair. They got to be able to fix it. But can they? Should they? Will they? Is always the question.
Well, hold on. Do they have that technology here, though?
I would say in the Fortress, yes.
I don't know about that.
Or in her little ship, because she's got her ship at the bottom of the ocean, if you remember.
But it might be able to do certain things for Kryptonian physiology. Human physiology is different.
True.
You got to also remember, they aren't the scientists that created the technology. Do they even have the skill set to adapt it? I would largely suspect, though, the technology that you're mentioning is not here on Earth. Because I can't imagine Superman saying, I've got stuff that can heal people from paralysis, and I'm just going to hoard it. It just doesn't fit Superman. I don't think that technology's there. What would be the downside to it? Like, why wouldn't you release it?
The overall dependence on the superhero. Why doesn't he stop the petty crime? Why doesn't he do this? Why? There's so many different stuff that Superman doesn't do to help people, but there's got to be that you have to let humanity... let's throw out the prime directive here. You can't interfere with the natural development of a society. And by introducing this extra science, this extra medicine, they could seriously be fundamentally altering Earth's natural development.
Superman has the cure for cancer. He's not going to release it onto the world. I don't believe it. It doesn't fit Superman. There's a difference between petty crime and a major disease. Paralysis is a major... I can't imagine him saying, I'm going to keep this person in a wheelchair when I have the technology to make them walk again. I don't think Supergirl and Superman have that technology here. I don't. Do I agree with everything you said about Kryptonians more than likely having said technology? Yes. That doesn't mean that technology traveled in the ship with Superman and Supergirl. Those ships were not necessarily meant for that purpose. They weren't big enough.
True.
To have the technology to do that. And the information that might be stored on the ship with Superman and Supergirl, they'd have to sort through for a lifetime in order to find the kind of tech and also to be able to develop the skills to develop the kind of tech we're mentioning. So I think you're right, that technology existed. I don't think they have it with them, though.
And again, I don't know. These are some of the stuff that once I started really seeing her, again, get connected to people, get connected with... These are always stuff that pop in my head. And especially with Supergirl, because we had that whole pre-New 52 story that to this day I still absolutely love, where she promised that little girl she was going to cure her. And she was going to go about it. And she wasn't going to quit until she found that cure. And I still think to that Supergirl who's saying, hey, I should be able to do this. I still think that that Supergirl would look at it saying, if I have the technology, if I have the mindset, I should do this. And I can see her and Clark having a discussion about what they should and shouldn't do. I agree with you. Superman, it's one of those things where yes, Superman would want to cure people, but there is that level of what is the appropriate level of reaction? What is the appropriate level of interaction? What's the appropriate level of healing to give to a society? It's a tough call. It's a difficult moral question to make, because on one hand you're saying, yes, if you can cure cancer, if you can cure AIDS, if you can make paralyzed walk, you should do it. But there is that question of if they're putting their faith in one person outside of themselves, is that really doing the society? Is that being actually good to the society?
Yes. Yes, it would be good for society because you're benefiting quality of life. And anytime you can increase and improve quality of life, you should do that. Why would you hold back improving quality of life?
You hold back to let the humans develop it, to let themselves, because put it this way, if you know Superman's going to give us the cure for this, they're not going to look into this. If they know Superman's going to fix this, they're not going to do it. They're not going, it's that whole, you can't have them dependent on one person, even Superman. Even someone as awesome as Superman, you can't have them have that sole dependence on him. They have to depend upon themselves to solve their problem.
See, and here's where I'm going to fundamentally disagree. If Superman had the technology to cure cancer, that doesn't make them dependent on him. He's giving them a cure. He's giving them information that they can use to cure their people. I don't see that being the case. Here's what I see more likely being the situation. What is the downside of releasing that technology? What weaponization could that technology have? What ultimately would cause Superman to say, I can't give you this, would be the negatives. How it gets perverted. That would be the reason.
Oh, definitely. Like you think about let's go back to Michael again, where this all began.
Sure.
Instead of fixing his spine, there's a cybernetic implant that repairs him. Well, hey, that's great. Only problem is the government gets their hands on that. And
right.
what if that makes a person who can, not walk, what will that do to a person who can already walk? That'll be a cybernetic enhancement that you can weaponize that. They can start looking at it. Let's not put it on the spine. Let's put it on the joints. Now we got somebody who can take, and who can run faster, who can take larger blows and stuff like that. And you can start, there could be the negative side. There could be the reason why they can't share it because of that. But I'm still thinking in my head that there's going to be this conversation along the way. Somewhere in these issues coming down the line, this is going to come back again. This is going to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah, I'm oof.
And I'm not, again, this is just something that popped in my head. These couple pages when I was watching, Michael and Supergirl's reaction. I was thinking, man, those two would make a neat little couple. One, it'd be kind of cool to see her on the dating side of humanity and dealing with Earth customs and traditions. Then once you start thinking about those two together, the first thought that did pop in my head is, okay, will she try to help him? Will she try to heal him? And once that thought pops in my head, I start going in multiple branches.
Yeah, I agree with you. That becomes an interesting part of it. I think if you did a storyline like that, you would have to do it very similar to what happened with that Supergirl storyline that you were talking about from the past.
Yeah.
You'd have to do something with some serious depth, weighing out the pros and cons of the cure. If it was just a straight cure with no ability to weaponize it as something else or to do something else with it hurtful, no, Superman would not deny it. You can't. How could you do that? How could you morally live with yourself? I understand what you're saying, becoming too dependent on him. They're already dependent on him. He's Superman. Why wouldn't you be? But in that case, to keep quality of life away from people, I don't know how you would deny that. I just can't. Not when people are dying from something and you can cure it. There would be an interesting storyline as far as the why. You'd have to see the negatives and what it would be. And maybe that would be a great 5 year later storyline where you end off the cliffhanger being Superman's ready to release it. The 5 year later storyline is what happens if he did,
right.
And we actually see 5 years later the after effect of it, and Superman sees it and has to go back in present day, has to go, oh, wait a minute, I can't do this because look what it would do and how many people would be hurt by it. That would have to be the storyline. Otherwise, I would never believe that Superman would deny it. I don't think Superman would deny it based on reliance of him. I couldn't see that happening.
Oh no, I agree with you on that. But again, it's for me the debate, the discussion, the concept of what if kind of always plays into effect, and it's I don't know. I agree with you. Superman would want to help the world, but I could, if they were to explain it where he throws out the can't be dependent on me, I would understand that explanation as well. We've seen it in the multiple movies. We've seen it in Oh God, I can't think of this Superman story. It was written by Azzarello.
I'm drawing a blank.
We did it on the show.
The Luthor story? It was a Superman story written by Azzarello? Oh, For Tomorrow.
Thank you. Superman for Tomorrow.
Thank
we
you.
see it in that story where he even comments on, could he cure cancer? And he's like, no, but I probably could if I thought about it, if I worked on it. Yeah, if you remember that line from there. So it's something that they have thrown out before.
But why didn't he? Because he's too busy being Superman. I'm going to disagree. That storyline to me more validates the fact that if he could, he would. But he would have to devote his time to that. That actually validates what I said earlier. They might have the technology and something they brought with him, but he would have to devote his life to sorting through everything from Krypton and actually experimenting on that. Which, how can you do that when you're busy being Superman?
Well, you stop being Clark Kent and you could. He wastes a lot of time being Clark Kent.
Does he waste time being Clark Kent? Why is he Clark Kent?
I was just joking around.
No, I know. But we're having a serious discussion here as far as why. I mean, there's a point to this. Superman actually would do it if he could. He can't.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's an interesting trap.
This is definitely one of those situations where, on one hand, yes, on one hand, no. But my yes and no fight each other in my own head. Because on the one hand, he definitely would reveal it because if he had it, if he could, he would because he's Superman. But then the other side of it, okay, reason he doesn't is because he's busy being Superman. But how much has he looked?
No. Hold on. You're trying to connect two things that aren't connected. You can't sit there and say that he's got it and he hasn't revealed it because he's Superman. That's not true. He doesn't have it.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant.
That is what you said.
It's not what I meant to say. How about that?
Okay.
Because I got the two sides of me that says if he had it, he would reveal it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then on the argument, the other side of it, whereas I look at it and say, he can't have it because
I have no problem with the idea. Let me clarify this part. I have no problem with the idea that Superman is too busy being Superman to cure cancer because he doesn't have the time. He's busy saving the world from otherworldly threats and things like that. He doesn't have time to sit down and explore it. I agree with that. He's doing things as Superman that nobody else can do and protecting Earth from things that the Earth could never protect itself from by and of itself. I think in that process, he does enable humans to help him. We see it in the Doom storyline. We see it in various storylines where he does that. His For Tomorrow example, I'm actually glad you threw that out there because I completely wasn't registering that. I'm glad you reminded me that was an Azzarello story, too. But in that storyline, his example of, I could do it if I devoted myself to doing that, I agree. I think actually Superman could. I think that is very true. But he would have to give up every other thing that makes him Superman in order to do that and devote his life to it. He would be a different character. He wouldn't be Superman anymore. And what would be the harm to Earth because he'd given up being Superman? There would be basically it's a wonderful life, in that moment where, hey, I want to give up being Superman to now be a research scientist. Well, you could, he could then visit 3 ghosts who would show him why he needs to be Superman. He can't do that. So then he would stop researching cancer. That would be the storyline there. It would be a weird version of It's a Wonderful Life, which they've done versions of that in comics before. I have no problem with that. My only issue with what you said, it's where you and I think, disagree. You were implying before that if Superman had the cure, he would hold it back because they would make them too dependent on him. I don't agree with that. I think he would only hold it back if there was a negative to the cure itself where it could somehow hurt humanity. And I don't think reliance on him, because once you release it, then as long as you can release it where they know the formula, they aren't relying on him. They just have that technology. There has to be a negative to the technology for Superman to hold it back. That's the only reason Superman would hold it back. He would not hold back something that could, if he could save millions of lives over years from cancer, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't hold it back. That's fundamental. I think that's fundamentally against Superman to hold something like that back, unless there's a huge negative to it.
And I'll be honest, I won't even argue that statement against. I won't even argue against that statement because I agree that is Superman. That is a Superman trait. But it just throughout all this, I do think in my head there's got to be they could do it where a story, and I don't know, I can't personally craft it because I don't know, I'm not, I don't have the right mindset to craft it, but somewhere they could craft the story that explains why Superman would have it and not release it. And it could be something, just what you're saying, where there's negative effects that we don't see, that only he sees or that he knows will be out there.
Superman the movie, he went in backwards around the Earth against his father's wishes and defied what his father said by doing that. He changed time in order to save a life. That man would not hold back that cure unless there was a negative.
True. I'll give you that.
But where I do agree with you, and I don't know that we're necessarily that far off. The danger of any technology, any alien technology, is usually it's not as simple as, it just cures cancer. No, it probably just cures cancer and also releases nanotechnology that would take over the world.
It rewrites human code.
Yes,
human code.
Exactly. Then that would be the negative to it. So, I mean, there would be something inherently negative to it that would make Superman go, I can't release that technology. Now, the argument would be, and this is where it goes to what For Tomorrow said, Superman could take that technology and work on it for the rest of his life and probably eventually find a workable cure that wouldn't have that negative. But that would mean having to give up everything else positive that he does as Superman. He can't do that. So it's the trap. Yes, I think he could have that. I think Kara could have that technology as well. But they would both have to, either one or both would have to give up being who they are right now and just devote the rest of their life to that, to make sure that they were delivering a safe cure. And they're not in a place to do that.
We are looking at a Kobayashi Maru here.
We are. That's exactly what it is. Exactly. So I don't know that we're sort of disagreeing, but not. I think we're both seeing the same problem. We're just coming at it from a different angle. And because I know our inherent belief of Superman and how good he is there. And if we put a vial in front of Superman right now and said, Superman, you are on planet Ran, and Ran has a cure for cancer that has absolutely zero negative to it, Superman's not going to go, well, I'm going to break this right now and disperse it because I don't want Earth to have it so they don't rely on me. That would never happen in a million years. It would only be if, like you said, the rewriting code example that you had is exactly why he would say, I'm not going to release it. It would be something like that. It's why in Superman storytelling you don't get stuff like that, because it wouldn't be a very interesting story of Superman if he could, like, Superman comes in and with the Superman finger touch, you're cured. It's not a very good story because there's no foil. There has to be something that Superman. The Supergirl story that we're referencing, why was that so interesting? It's because Supergirl couldn't save,
right?
Not because she could. It was because she couldn't.
Yeah, and because she went against Clark's wishes, when she told the little girl, hey, I'm going to cure you. She went against what Clark said, hey, you can't tell him that. You can't say that. He's like, no, I'm going to find a way. And she learned firsthand that, yes, they're super. Yes, they powers beyond those of mortal men. But guess what? You can't always win. Right.
And I like that. Actually, that was the part of the story that...
that was the touching part. That really, again... It showed her humanity, for lack of term. It made us realize who she is, and we got, again, a deeper glimpse into she wasn't the whiny Supergirl.
Yes,
she was this really cool character who was doing stuff that we would do. Like, if I had all these powers, if I could be the powers of Superman, I would look at stuff like that. I would start looking at the big picture, but there's always the consequences behind those actions. There's always that there's something that you don't really see. When you start down the road, you're not going to see the final outcome until either you get too far or too late.
That's the stuff I really like.
Yeah. And all this is coming out of just her interaction with Michael, who, for all practical purposes, could just be a one-shot. We may never see him again.
But that's a sign of a great issue.
Yeah.
This debate is a sign of a great issue. Yeah. That, in all honesty, we could probably have another couple hours of a discussion on this where we start bringing in other heroes and start really talking about. That, to me, is when there starts to become a reality to what we're reading. when you start thinking well beyond the page. And I love this kind of stuff because it's not an easy answer. And even the answer, like we've sort of come to a conclusion that we're both happy with right now, but even that's not clean. You know what I mean? and I like that. That to me is far more interesting when at the end we're kind of like, your Kobayashi Maru example is a very good one because that's exactly what this is. It's Supergirl's. Speaking of that, Cyborg Superman at the ending of this, coming down to Earth as a part of Brainiac's army. We know it's her dad. She doesn't.
Yeah. Now, does he remember that he's her dad or no?
No.
Okay, I couldn't remember that part.
Because that was part of when he went back to being Cyborg Superman. Because it was, in order for him, he had to give up being himself in order for
to save her.
Right, exactly. Which was a very heart-wrenching story. I love that. I actually really like that twist. But we see that the Future's End issue, Supergirl and Cyborg Superman attack Earth in Future's End Supergirl #1. I want to see what happens to Kara in the far future, or in 5 years in the future, that would make her side with him to attack Earth. I can't wait to read that issue.
Yeah. Because again, it's funny because the way this issue ends, it leads up to these very positive moments. She saves Michael's parents, and then they have their little kiss, and you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden, wave 2 of the Brainiac invasion, the lightning from everybody's eyes, and then she looks up and she sees Cyborg Superman. I was like, this was just a great just ending to this. We have these happy, feel-good moments, and then it ends in a very horrific manner, and then that clip of 5 years in the future where what's going to happen there. This was a great, again, I'm really digging Supergirl throughout her Red Lantern days, her pre-Red Lantern where she's getting her grips on what is humanity, everything that we were getting through, and then right to this point in time. And Supergirl is actually a really cool title.
I've enjoyed all 34 issues of this book. We've had different creative changes throughout the title, but I've really consistently liked this exploration and gradual evolution of her. I like where she's at now.
Yeah.
I love that she's looking into space, and it's clear that her feelings towards humanity are a lot different now, and I'm glad to see that evolution. The Cyborg Superman I encountered in deep space, I never did find out why he wears the sacred family crest of the House of L on his chest. But if he is in league with Brainiac, then I'm going to tear him apart piece by piece.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. That's really, really good material because we know her history with Brainiac and what Brainiac did to her world. And the reason why she's so upset about Brainiac is because what had happened to her parents.
Yeah.
This is dad. She doesn't even know it. There's an irony to that. That's a great twist for us as a reader that we're in on, that like, oh yeah, that's cool.
And I tell you, I like the look of this Cyborg Superman, by the way.
I do too.
I really, we talk about just changes through the New 52. I like the fact that it's the costume throughout, but it's a cyborg nation of the costume. It's not just a pure, just robotic type body with the big S on the chest. No, this was a Kryptonian battle armor that became Cyborg Superman. I thought that's a really cool look to have.
Agreed. It's a really, really good title, and I can't wait for more.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
Hey, Sean, Jim, it's D'Angelo from the D, and I just wanted to congratulate you on 400 episodes. Man, that's awesome. You know, I love what you're doing. Love every week that I get an episode. I just can't wait to listen to it. And I just listened to episode 400. I love the take on reviewing these bad movies, but I think you guys might have forgotten the worst DC movie. You might have put it out of your minds. And that would be starring NBA great Shaquille O'Neal, Steel. That I don't even think you can find it on a DVD or Blu-ray anymore. But that thing was hot garbage. Maybe it didn't cross your mind because it took me a while. I was like, oh man, I can't believe they made that movie. But I love what you're doing, guys, and congrats on 400.
Okay, here's an honest truth about that. I've never seen that movie. Have you seen it?
Oh, God, yeah, I've seen it. And you know what? I agree completely with his statement and his assessment of it. The reason I didn't throw that one out was because we had talked about Catwoman before,
Sure.
and then we were going Batman and Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And, Steel is in the Superman family, but we had such bad Superman actually to choose from and such bad Batman to choose from. That's why I didn't even throw Steel out there. But I completely agree with his assessment with it. That one would have been another one where we would have had so many different things to mess with and just... Yeah, it was. If you've never seen it and you enjoyed bad movies, watch it, because there are some moments in it when you're like, man, this would have been a really cool movie if they hadn't done this or if they hadn't done that. There's a couple stuff in there that, oof.
I'm just looking right now to see if it's available on iTunes because I've never seen it.
Yeah,
and honestly, I'll be honest. The reason why I did not see it. It's on. Oh, yeah, it's on iTunes. Mm-hmm. It's not available in HD, but it's like $10. And let's see, hold on. Well, I won't buy it now because that'll actually mess with our current downloads. But I am going to grab it, and the reason why I'm going to grab at some point we have to do this because it looked awful to me. And woof.
Yeah,
I never saw that one. I only saw bits and pieces. There was the first Fantastic Four movie. I'm not talking about with Jessica Alba. I'm talking about the one before that. I've never seen that completely. I saw bits and pieces of it. I also saw bits and pieces of that Justice League attempt that they did, and I never saw the whole thing of that. I'm talking about the early one. Yes. That was oof. Yeah, but this from 1997. I want to see it just because I haven't. So don't say too much about it.
Okay.
Because we'll ask Art if he wants to punish himself some more, and maybe at some point we'll do that. Just because, at least you and I'll do it. Just because I think we should.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen it. I think that in of itself would be interesting, coming at it from a movie that you've seen and I haven't, and you clearly have memories of. This has been fun though. Like, you know what surprised me more? With the movies that we've done the first two, and we actually are making plans right now to, over the next couple of weeks, record Catwoman with Art. So that will be coming in September. I really liked, just as much as the things that we universally don't like, the differences between what we did. There were actually things that I think surprised all of us that somebody else liked.
Yeah.
Out of our crew when we were having these conversations. And that there were certain themes in all three movies that really could have turned into very workable movies. But they just made choices that they shouldn't have.
Yes.
So this will be fun. Shaq at some point. Shaq is Steel. It'll be fun to talk about that one. Because I have no background in it, other than to me it always looked like something I wouldn't enjoy. So, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and Judd Nelson was the evil scientist, huh?
Yes.
Wow. They have Richard Roundtree in it, and they had some this actually had some people that were decent. Like
they had some actual true actors in there.
Wow. And
you'll see some of these true real actors go, and you're just like, really? Why'd you do that? It's yeah. There's a couple moments, I'll tell you right now. There are going to be some moments where you're like, oh, that's kind of neat. There are some stuff that, there is some cool stuff in there, and there's some good stuff, just like any of the other stuff we discussed. But as an overall story, there's so much more and different and better they could have done with Steel.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of need to see this.
Yeah.
Just on general principle.
Holy caffeine!
Sponsoring this episode, once again, is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Be sure to head over to DCB Service's website to check out the deals being offered in September. They usually put them up the first week of the month, so be sure to check them out. I'm always excited at that time because it's great to see the brand new books that are going to be coming out for pre-order, but also the amazing discounts that you can... I like to make a strategy. I like to get a certain number of monthlies. I like to get a certain number of single issues and trades and hardcovers, but I'm into statues now, so it's great over DCBService.com to be able to pre-order those. So whatever you're into, whatever you're looking for, they have deals on them there. And be sure to check out our sponsor, DCBService.com. I want to thank them for sponsoring us and other podcasts out there. Over at InStockTrades.com, I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the Fables Trade Paperback Volume 20. Huge fan of this series. This collects issues 131 to 136 from the Camelot storyline. $19.99 regularly, 50% off, only $9.99 from InStockTrades.com. I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. It's always available on our website. It's always available in the show notes for every episode. We love having you a part of the show. We also have a Raging Bullets webpage. It's ragingbullets.com, and that's always where you're going to find out show news on where we're heading. So that feeds to our Twitter. It also feeds to our Raging Bullets Facebook page. Besides that, we have a Raging Bullets group, a Facebook group that we share with DCinfinite.com. So remember, that's separate from the regular Facebook page. It's a wonderful community of people. It's fellow podcasters, fellow fans of comics and pop culture. People are constantly sharing things they're doing on their blogs and things, too. It's a great social community. It's the best way to put it. That's well beyond our podcast, and I want to thank everyone who's a part of that. We have Google Plus pages as well, so you can find us on any form of social media that you want to get updates on the podcast, and we value you. And I also want to take a quick few seconds to shout out thank you to everybody who shouts out our podcast. We don't have time to promote and advertise the show. We also don't have a budget to promote or advertise the show. We rely heavily on word of mouth. So anytime you tell a friend, you post on a blog or on a page that you enjoy our podcast, you retweet something that we're doing or share a Facebook link to something that we've shared, you're letting people know that we're out there, and we really greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much for doing that. We rely on you for that heavily. Our next episode, Jim, we're going to continue talking about some of our favorite comic books we've been reading recently. We're going to get caught up on the Red Lanterns. That's going to be for sure next week, and Sinestro. Plus, we'll have some other titles that we're going to throw in that you and I will discuss over the course of the week. We'll figure out some titles that we want to put on, but that'll be a part of our next show next week. Then after that, you're going to be joining us for Catwoman. So a lot of things coming your way over the next couple weeks. So we will see you then.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome for you and me. Bye.
This is exactly what I warned people about at the beginning of the episode. I said, do not listen to this podcast. This is exactly why I warned them not to. There's people right now whose ears are bleeding because of that. And I warned you not to do that, not listening to this podcast. So on that note, goodbye.
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.